The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode is Cues of the Force, Qualms of the Force. No, we'll have some qualms for sure, but this is Questions of the Force. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. We got qualms, we got answers, we got it all right here. This is the show that gives you the information you need. I don't even know what that is.
It will give you some information. You get to decide whether you need it. We'll have plenty of A's, answers, to go along with our cues. But we also have, we have so many A's like this. Today's podcast is brought to you by the letter A, Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We are recommending the new Star Wars book, the tie-in to the beloved Jedi Survivor and Fallen Jedi Order video games, Battle Scars by Sam Meggs. We can't wait to dive into that. If you want to listen to it, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for a free audiobook. But there are still more A's. Ken?
There are always A's in life. There's always a bigger A, and we've got a current ask. This is our focus today. We are asking you all to consider checking out our Patreon page, patreon.com/ForceCenter. It's a great place for us to build the structure of support that leads ForceCenter forward. And look, we also understand Patreon is not for everyone for a variety of reasons. Maybe your own or maybe some of the platform. We understand too, and you still want to support us listening, sharing the show, all that stuff, or just being here is the best support you can. But for those who are interested, check it out, because on the Patreon page, I got sounds in the background. People are so excited. I can't mute that one out. We have got our new series. That's right. Other Center is here, and Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcast is coming Monday, March 20th, the first episode. We recorded already. I'm so excited for you all to hear it. It's an overall conversation about Indiana Jones, the franchise, the character, and everything in between. And then from there, we'll have our Patreon exclusive first episodes of Rage of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, all leading towards Dial of Destiny. And yes, after that movie comes out, we will release those episodes to the public because we want everyone to hear. But for right now, you get to hang out with us and build the anticipation for that movie. And also, there's a new goal attached to the channel. You made one goal happen, which was a live Star Wars rank. We're going to announce information on that soon. Our next goal is a Jennifer Landa YouTube series, a mini doc series. This is great. Years ago, when we started this podcast, Jennifer had this wonderful show called Jedi Beat, and then that morphed into another wonderful show, Happy Beeps, with the best theme song in the world from Tony Thaxton. And we are going to go back and take some of the favorite episodes from us, but especially for Jen, and repurpose them as kind of mini documentaries, if you will, on our YouTube channel. And that's going to be at our next goal, which is $2,000 a month. So if you want to help us reach that goal, head over to patreon.com/ForceCenter to make that happen. Back to you, sir, at the desk.
Excellent asking. Extremely smooth, well done. All the information there, all the enthusiasm there. That is great stuff. We have nowhere to go but down. So let's see if we can stay up here. We're going to dive into our cues. We've got 2 questions from Twitter and 2 from our patrons on Patreon. As always, we go first to Michael Gibson. Michael says, hello all. Thank you all for all the wonderful and fun Star Wars conversation. It's been great sharing all these news stories with you the last several years. Do you think we'll see all of the prequel movies get their certain point of view books for their 25th anniversaries? Michael, thank you for the kind words. I love that way of phrasing this journey that we've all been on, and those of you who listen to ForceCenter that have been on that journey with us to share the news stories, the excitement, then they're actually happening, and then going through the stories after they've actually happened to go, how does this little bit in Kenobi connect to this part of this other story? I love that. I also think this is obviously a timely question, since the roster for the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary book has just been announced, and I saw one of the editors of the books, the Star Wars books, being I'm trying to think of the right word, vociferously engaged with on social media with offers to write for the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, a book that I don't think publishing has ever said anything about, but fans have decided are happening and are already asking the editor to please let them write their story about C.O. Bibble. Hey, look, we all have a C.O. Bibble story. Anyway, Ken, where do you go with this? Where do you go with the idea of them doing a 25th anniversary of Phantom Menace book like they've done the 40th anniversary for the original trilogy?
Yeah, what would it be, 2039?
That's 20th, right? Or 30th.
30th. Oh, God.
Yeah, right? That's how math works. I promise myself every time we start to record, I will not do math on air. Do not do math on air. And I always disappoint myself by doing math on air. That's 40 years. Yeah, for the 40 years, obviously.
It's okay. It's a lot of years.
It is. But I think the question is, since they're on this now, instead of who knows if books exist in 40 years, the question of would they do the 25th instead? Yes.
No. Sorry, but one of the, Tom, the editor you're talking about, had tweeted out the year. I think that's why I got stuck in my brain. 25th. 25th. Yes, I like that better because I don't think it's, unfortunately, I'll say this, I don't think it's going to happen on the 25th, but I can't comprehend 40 years of that. I think we'll still be here, hopefully, God willing, both us and the planet, but I just don't want to think of breaking that down in my 60s, but that would be the case. But 25th, the point is, and I think Michael's question is, I absolutely want to get to these stories. I do want them. My relationship with the From a Certain Point of View books is, number one, very positive. It's changed a little bit since the first one where we talked about it on the news show this week. Is it canon, Jason? I don't really care either way, but I just don't view them like I did in 2017, which was a notepad going, oh, this absolutely happened, and it's an answer I've been waiting for about the Dianoga. That's not where I'm at with those books, but I absolutely want to celebrate the characters in those stories, episodes 1, 2, and 3. And there's so many wonderful, wonderful characters that you could get to. What is it? Jira, right? Storms are coming. Give me that story. What was she doing there? How does she know that the storm's coming and her bones are creaking? Like, give me her journey. I just want to celebrate those movies, and I'd rather get those now than 40 years. 25 for 25, if you need to do that. 25 for 40, it's like a deal in Vegas. Like, used to go to the Riviera. They do 20 for 20, 20 spins for $20. Like, that's what I want. So yes, I'd like to get to it. I just don't think it's going to happen until maybe 2039.
2039, the 40th anniversary. I agree with a lot of your points. I did math to make sure I was right on the very simple math of 25 years after 1999. One should be able to do that in one's head. Anyway, it's 2024, also known as next year. So I think if they do have any plans to do it, we'll be hearing about it probably at Celebration. Yeah. I think it probably isn't happening, but I think it's a case of demand. I think obviously us kind of all in Star Wars fans are excited about it because we're enjoying these books. I think it seems like almost everybody, even if they have a couple stories like, ooh, not for me, that almost everyone is finding a couple that they really love and hold close to their heart. It was cool to see, R5D4 get his big moment to shine in The Mandalorian, and then having people go like, yeah, the red one is one of my favorite stories. I think about that one a lot. It's meaningful. It's great. And so I think there's clearly excitement in the all-in fandom. I have no idea how these books sell, I'm sure they sell well because they're Star Wars, right? And I'm sure they probably pop onto bestseller lists right when they're released, but I wonder about the demand of them. I also assume that these are kind of difficult to produce, that they are unwieldy, right? Like the first one comes out and it's a fun experiment and then it works, so they got to follow through, right? But I mean, just from my own creative history, communicating with all of the partners is the hardest part. It's the making the art of like a short film isn't hard. Emailing everybody all the time, going, "Hey, can I have this? You got this? You got time for this? Oh, sorry, got to change that date. Oh, what? Oh, God, like,
yep.
I imagine managing 40 authors and deadlines and requests for certain stories, and know this person is doing that, but I imagine it's a lot. So I think it would be. Are the numbers there so amazing that they're like, yep, we want to immediately pivot to covering the prequels? Yeah.
No, I mean, it's and there's no shortage of authors wanting to be a part of it for sure, which is also part of the problem. You got to pick 40 out of the 400. I agree with you there, and it's something that I'd be curious to know the story of when they launched the first one. Did they already think, yep, we're absolutely going to do Empire and Jedi? Or, hey, might as well keep going. And yeah, that sometimes happens. I launched a Game of Thrones rewatch series on my podcast. I'm stuck on season 4 for about 2 years because I just I don't have time to keep going. But I guess I started it, so I got to finish it. So maybe that's it. Maybe they're worried about that.
Yeah, maybe. It obviously clearly works well as a sort of meat test out for new authors, because we've definitely seen that where some authors have had a short story and then have written a novel and all that kind of thing. So that's great. I would be totally down. Did some thinking about, do we think it's going to happen? In terms of just what I want, I'd love a Phantom Menace that was a 25-year, 25 story. Because in some ways, I think I love the 40, but in some ways, I'd be like, yeah, let's pare it down a little bit. I definitely want Gragra's story, but do we need Gragra's and Rumpsleg's story?
Yeah.
Do we need a story from every single pod racer, or just, in my opinion, Team Toe? It might make it more slick. So I hope for it, and I'll prepare my pitch for the DLC 13. Panning droid on Mustafar for the Revenge of the Sith book.
Oh yeah, that's all you there. We need to have the emotional story from Rats Tyrell's wife.
Oh,
you need to know that tale of her walking past and she looks over and sees a man in robes talking to Watto. Yeah, that's what we need.
I left my heart in the Laguna Caves. Yeah. The pain. Any other thoughts on the possibility of 25th anniversary prequel books?
Yeah, not putting chips on it happening, but I'd love that. Exactly what we're talking about, just to celebrate that wonderful movie and that wonderful trilogy in it, which is just chock full of so many potential stories around the corners.
Yeah. No, and that it would be a great celebration of, how much the world has heard other voices who celebrate the prequel, so that would be great. Yeah. We will see. Another announcement we are imagining might happen at Star Wars Celebration. Yeah. We'll see. All right, we're going to move on to our next question, which is actually 2.5 tweets combined. I'm going to start here. There's a wonderful artist on social media, and 2 different people pointed out the artwork that this person made and asked us a similar question. So we'll go first to the original tweet from Uzuri Art. Uzuri Art says, last year, I illustrated a concept of Qui-Gon if he had survived the events of the Phantom Menace and had served in the Clone Wars. I wanted to expand upon it and conceptualize his unit as well. If you want to look up Uzuri Art, you can go ahead and do a search. We'll describe the image. It's a great image of Qui-Gon. It really in the kind of early Clone Wars Jedi robes combined with lots of armor, but it's black. He's got the larger chest plate. He's got the big pauldron with the Jedi symbol on it. He's holding his lightsaber and kind of glancing off to the side. He's got his own group of clone troops with their own wonderful design. He's got some sort of clone commander pal right next to him who looks stern and thoughtful and loyal, arms behind back. Just all around great, absolutely great art that clearly does set the mind on fire. And we know that it does because we got 2 different questions about it. This first one comes from listener Yuval Eisler. Yuval says, I saw the drawing by the amazing Uzari Art online of Qui-Gon Jinn. If he had lived and been a general in the Clone Wars, the drawing really jumpstarts the imagination. What do you think? Would he join the war, leave the order? What would have made him join? Then a Twitter user, Daria is my alter ego, broke it down into some specific questions that they would like answered. If Qui-Gon had survived episode 1 and been around for the Clone Wars, would he have? 1. Stayed with the Jedi Order and fought beside his old Padawans, Obi-Wan and Anakin. 2. Joined Dooku, as Dooku seemed to suggest he would have to Obi-Wan in episode 2. Or 3. Left the Order entirely in a show of pacifism. Thanks for answering my question. Thank both of you for the question and for pointing out this great art. So, Ken, I'm going to start here. What are your thoughts or reactions to the art itself?
It is wonderful art, and I want to be clear about that because what the art says, if he had survived and if he had served. So it's 2 what ifs right there, and that's what I think it would look like. And it's some great art. I love the black the armor, as you said, which is interesting, intriguing for Qui-Gon. And even like the kind of dark beige kind of color to the squad there on their armor. I love everything about it. And it's that kind of, like our users are saying here, listeners are saying here, makes you think and sparks imagination. So love the art. We're starting there. Love the art.
Yeah, me too. It's just a great artwork. I love that the background is this sort of a little bit of muddy, a little bit of sort of swipes in shapes, and then there's the Jedi symbol back there. But it is faded. All of it speaks really well to like this image looks like a great capturing of the idea of like maybe Qui-Gon would have ended up serving, but it would not have been a happy thing. I love that his armor is dark. I love that he and his clone companion are both looking away and a little bit down. This is not propaganda where they're heroes of the war and they're looking up. This is looking up like they're kind of cast down. Great visually, the way the energy all has this sort of diagonal swoop downward that really speaks to, we just made another decision that we don't feel great about. That's the power of this art to me, is it captures the mood that Qui-Gon might have had if he had ended up in the war.
If indeed.
Big ifs. So we're going to get into those. Ken, feel free to approach this any way you want. You can grab the questions from any direction. I'm sure we'll get to all of them. Where do you start with these big what ifs?
My overall reaction is I'm at 90% going to the betting board here. 90% he'd refuse to fight. 10% I'm saying might feel this is for the light side, right? Which maybe is the start of the war. Again, we're assuming that he's not plugged into the fact that Palpatine's behind it. That kind of stuff, which I often say is, don't forget, everyone was tricked by the big baddie there. So he might think, yes, this isn't what I want to do, but maybe we have to because we must stand before the darkness. But without a doubt, we've already seen, it just makes a lot of sense that I don't know if he necessarily would think the separatists themselves and many of their ideas are. So that this middle option from Daria as my alter ego, join Dooku, as Dooku seems to suggest, I don't think that would be the case, even though I could follow it out a little bit based on what we've seen in some of those the Dooku episodes of Tales of the Jedi, where I think you just see it young Qui-Gon. You see that with the way Dooku's reacting, and he makes a decision that even Dooku's kind of like, hey, good on you. And then Dooku keeps sliding down the path. So I think even if he was to connect with Dooku and hear him out, and Dooku's like, hey, I'm siding with the separatists, or I'm going over here, I'm casting my lot here, I still think at some point Qui-Gon would say, no. Not even factor in the Sith side of it. Would be like, I think you're pushing it too far. I think you're pushing the dark over the light in that general sense. And I think so. All this today, sorry, this is rambling, Joseph. All this to say is not 90%. I said 90% refuse to fight. Order 3 or number 3, leave the order. Leave the order is my ultimate answer.
Yeah, I think there's so many great what ifs in this, and I will get to the actual questions, but I started with my own what ifs of basically how does his training of Anakin go, and how does the revelation that he is correct that Darth Maul was a Sith Lord. How does he marry those things? Because there's just stay in the moment, stay in the present Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Who says, Anakin, you are the chosen one. I believe that, but let's not worry about what that means. Fate and the Force will tell us what that means. You just be the best Jedi you can be. And he's, I think, probably as a lot of fans have talked about, he's going to be a little bit more understanding of Anakin's feelings. He's going to be real understanding of Anakin's fear and anger and guide him through it a little bit better. Instead of just kind of lecturing him like my beloved Obi-Wan Kenobi did. That's not a bash on Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan feels he made some mistakes, and I agree with my favorite character, Obi-Wan, that he made some mistakes. So I think Qui-Gon's in a better place to be a little bit of the father figure that Anakin needs. But does he follow his instincts to say, the Sith are here, Anakin is the chosen one? I believe that means that that evil is on the rise. Something is going on with the Sith, but we'll let that come to us when it comes to us. Or does some of the stuff that we've seen in with Qui-Gon, where he wrestles with with how to deal with prophecies, how much to invest in them. He's certainly engaging with the prophecy and saying, I'm not saying I'm going to turn the world upside down, but I believe it's true. I believe the chosen one prophecy is true, and I believe it's this boy.
Mm-hmm.
Does he? So I think the reason that I'm going down this twisty Qui-Gon alley is he survives Phantom Menace. He is training Anakin with the Council's permission. I think that there's a part of Qui-Gon that has the you can't just be here on Coruscant going, we'll deal with the problem. The Sith are back, and I'm feeling it when I go out in the galaxy. The Force is out of balance. People are suffering more. Things like that Trade Federation that should have been just a little bit of greed, and they needed a little slap on the wrist to back off the greed move, which is what he expected at the beginning of the Phantom Menace. He's like, when he's talking about this, these moves don't make sense for the Trade Federation. Does Qui-Gon leave that alone? Or does he insist on pulling the thread of, we should be assertive and aggressive about looking for the Sith and about challenging what's going on in the galaxy?
Well, this is great because you're also making me a little upset at the Jedi Order in the years right after Phantom Menace. You all wondered, Mace and Yoda have that conversation at the end. And, I know there was some stories, especially in Legends, of looking for the Sith Lord. And I'm not saying they just sat on their hands up there, but it can come across as that. And I think you're really right. This to answer the question, you definitely start here. The Anakin training thing is fascinating and very key. But you got to imagine that they'd almost be annoyed with Qui-Gon. Yes, we got it. We're working on it. We're filing we got an investigative team. And he'd be like, this is important. The Sith are back. The Sith are back. So to the point of, who knows? Maybe we don't even get to the Clone Wars because he's leading the charge a little bit longer. Maybe pushes Palpatine out sooner. I don't know. That's even my fun headcanon situation. Detective Qui-Gon on the case.
Yeah.
Right there.
And I think it's really interesting because I think to me the story of the Jedi is we don't want to give into paranoia. We don't want to be running around the galaxy, pointing fingers everywhere. Are you a Sith Lord? Are you a Sith Lord? You a Sith Lord? Yeah. The Jedi have this really difficult balance of they want to be about defense, right? But sometimes being about defense means that you're not being proactive while evil is growing. If you're just waiting for somebody to strike, that can be dangerous. But if you're also policing the galaxy and going we're pretty sure some of you might be about to do something evil. Then you're getting into, and this is why I have such, justice for the Jedi, because it's a hard road. When and how proactive should you be? Yeah. But I think Qui-Gon was in the Phantom Menace is tipping towards he's the chosen one. The Sith are back. Yeah. Time to be a little proactive. I feel like that's where he would have been. He might have prepared Anakin. I think he would have at least prepared Anakin to say you don't need to do anything different in your Jedi training because you're the chosen one. You're not better than any other Jedi. You're just different. But you should think about it. You should think about what that prophecy means to you. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't push it out of your mind. You should decide how you feel about it. It might have better prepared Anakin to decide for himself what he thinks the prophecy means. Yeah. And then the pressure of I could be a better Jedi and I'm not, and yeah. No, I think you really have to start there, and what Qui-Gon knows, or what he feels he knows, or what he feels he believes in at the end of that. Yeah, movie. I agree with you on I agree with you on number 2 on joining Dooku. I do think that Qui-Gon and Dooku are aligned, that the Jedi are in too much lockstep with the Senate, particularly as it gets more tied up in red tape, and that the Jedi have lost sight of what is actually going on in the galaxy, and they're spending too much time sort of cloistered on Coruscant. So I think he's aligned with a lot of Dooku's beliefs, but as we see in Tales of the Jedi, he's not aligned on how far Dooku is willing to go based on them, right? So I think Dooku is wrong. I don't think he could have broken Qui-Gon. I think think Qui-Gon would have, by the time, if Qui-Gon was alive at the time that Dooku is I am the public-facing leader of the Separatists. And as the Crawl to Attack of the Clones tells us, the Separatists are launching attacks. I think Qui-Gon would have sought out Dooku and say, I agree with every one of your political concerns. I agree with every one of your criticisms of the Senate. But I cannot abide you allowing your supporters to carry out violent attacks. That's not the way to solve this,
Yeah, and I think there would have been some kind of conversation of, again, agree with you overall, Dooku, but like what you're doing, the actions don't align with the heart that I think you have, which might mean Qui-Gon might stumble onto maybe you don't have the heart anymore, that heart and soul, that your viewpoint has changed and something else is going on. Again, Detective Qui-Gon on the case type of vibe. But, like, exactly, that'd be this dinner conference, maybe they meet at Dex's in a booth in the corner.
It's a really funny image to imagine.
Imagine
Dooku at like, I do not want to be served by Hermione Bagua. This is beneath the Count of Soretto.
Is that four-armed creature going to sweat into my soup, my bog?
He touched his buttocks while lifting his pants.
I think we need that scene now. This is like Chino and De Niro and Heat sitting there in the diner. It'd be amazing, but boy, it'd be a fascinating conversation where Qui-Gon would be, I don't want to say concede on points, but like, yeah, I feel you. I've been there. I know what you're saying. I feel it too. This ain't the way, Chief, and I don't think it's lined up for you. Like, I don't. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right. And Dooku's been, he's been bought already. And I think Qui-Gon would be the one to say it. Because again, there's a lot of truth. You and I have talked so much about that scene. We love that scene in Attack of the Clones, and I think there's some truth. It's a great question. Dooku is telling Kenobi so many truths, and that's why he can sneak in that lie.
Yeah. Well, I think Qui-Gon would bear the sort of guilt of I've seen this in my training. There's a bit in Master and Apprentice where Qui-Gon was probably too young to realize what it was at the time, but as he gets older, like Dooku's been experimenting with some dark side abilities. Qui-Gon himself is the one who has to stop Dooku from, in his righteous anger, doing something that is not moral, of just cutting down that corrupt leader that we see in the Tales of the Jedi. So Qui-Gon would also have this burden of like, I know he's been wrestling with things.
Yes.
And so I think there's a possibility that Dooku does make the offer to Qui-Gon and he doesn't get a good answer, and Dooku either tries or succeeds in killing Qui-Gon before the Clone Wars.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a dark turn. I like it.
Yeah. Don't like that. So if Qui-Gon survives, if Qui-Gon still, if he's either still training Anakin, or hey, Anakin becomes great and it becomes a Jedi Knight at 16 under Qui-Gon's tutelage, and he is still alive, still a member of the Jedi Order, doesn't know Dooku is fallen to the Sith yet, and the Clone Wars break out, does he serve? I don't think so. I think maybe at the beginning he's like, I will send me on missions where I am helping those who are in need. I will, I will guard refugee ships. I will stop if a village is being pillaged. I will stop raiders. I will not go on the offensive for you. And our closer watch and our closer reading of the Clone Wars animated series, I really like how the beginning of the war, everybody, all the Jedi are able to be like, yep, we're defending the Republic from attacks. And then it slips and they can't. And pretty soon they're raiding a planet, fighting the people who live there, and I just don't think Qui-Gon, I think at that point, Qui-Gon would have walked away and said, I'm guided by the Force. I don't need to be a part of the Order to go, defend people who are being attacked. I'll do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful point. I love that. Yeah, he and Pong Krell would have a conversation that's tough at one point, I think. But this is about like the art. This is what I wanted to really make sure I pointed out. I love the art from Yuzuri Art. I think it's great. So I don't want this to sound like anything negative against it. But even just looking at Qui-Gon in that armor, he'd be like, "No, this do we all not see? This is we're going to war," and that would be the start of the conversation with him for leaving.
Yeah, I think so. This is such a amazing, beautiful, fun can of Qui-Gon Jinn worms.
Yeah. And again, to point out, the artist saying, if he had survived and if he had served. So again, we're dealing with a lot of what ifs just in that photo. But before we get to even that, I think there'd be a lot of ways, a lot of hurdles to get on to get Qui-Gon in the army.
Yeah, and I love that the art does reflect this. This really does not look like a triumph. This looks like a burden, and an upsetting one at that. So great fun to talk through everything. I think we answered all the questions, right? Yeah, we did. Yeah. All right. So, any final thoughts on Qui-Gon and the Clone Wars before we take a break?
The one thing I'll say is it just Qui-Gon, as time goes on, it just becomes one of the most important characters in Star Wars. He's the lead of that movie, which is key if you're talking about that movie. And there's so many things that spring out of his life and his lessons and his philosophies. Love it.
Yep. A really fun character to say, not to me, not a gray Jedi, not somebody like I walk my own way and sometimes when needed, I kick ass or tap into just a little bit of rage. I'm the one in the middle. That's not for me. I think he's saying, hey, the Jedi have lost their way a little bit because we need to continue to question things. We need to be willing to say, why is this rule this rule? But I think that makes him even more of a Jedi than not a Jedi.
Yes. Okay.
Excellent. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with more cues. Back in a moment. And we are back with more Cues of the Force. We go now to two patrons from Patreon. First, Simon Huffnagel. Here's what Simon has to say. Hello again, ForceCenter friends. I've been greatly enjoying the current run of Marvel mainline comics. The trilogy of War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, and Hidden Empire has filled out the post-Empire Strikes Back period in a very interesting way. However, the comics now seem like they're closing in on the events of Return of the Jedi. So my question is this. Do you think the comics will move past Return of the Jedi and start filling in the 5-year gap leading up to The Mandalorian? Or do you think they'll go elsewhere because the overall story of the Mandoverse is still evolving? If the comics stay the course, what post-Return of the Jedi stories are you looking forward to seeing? There might be an inherent challenge there because we already have some storytelling in place, Aftermath, Alphabet Squadron, Battlefront 2, etc. But I'd like to see what the comics can do with that time. If the comics shift elsewhere, what time period would you want them to go to? Thanks again, and may the Force be with you. All right, this is another great multi-layered question. So, Ken, let's just start with the comics themselves. How caught up are you on all the comics that Simon is talking about?
I am a couple weeks behind. I last night sat down and I reading the Mando adaptation season 1. Which is fun. The adaptations are great because it's like, yeah, you're just reading the show that you watch, but I just like, there's a couple little things different and just kind of like refreshing my mind. And it's just fun. So I'm catching them on that one first. And then I'm going to get into the Yoda, the Blade of Barada, all that stuff is still in front of me here. So I am a little behind.
Yeah, me too. I am definitely behind on the main Star Wars line. I only read like the first couple arcs of that. I read the actual War of the Bounty Hunters. I haven't read all the tie-in stuff yet. Haven't read Crimson Reign or Hidden Empire. I loved War of the Bounty Hunters much more than I was expecting to. I loved the focus on Boba Fett. I really liked what was going on with Kira and Crimson Dawn. So I'm enjoying a lot of it. The stuff that I have read of the main Star Wars line, some of it I'm a little challenged by. I like Luke having another lightsaber, but I wished it was just a different color, honestly, because I think, Luke running around with a yellow blade right after that, the revelation of Rey's blade. I don't know. There was something about that. It was just like,
yeah,
I didn't want 2 brand new yellow blades to canon. That's a weird personal thing for me. Not a huge criticism of the comics because Charles Soule, I think, is one of the greatest writers to ever touch Star Wars. The total personal thing, but I am not all caught up on that. So bear that in mind as we go through this. So even with us both not caught up, you much more caught up than myself. How do you feel about where the comics will go? Do you want them to go past Return of the Jedi? And if so, where?
There's definitely room, that roughly 5 years, time period. But again, we got the Aftermath, Alphabet Squadron, Battlefront 2. So I'll start somewhat negatively. I would not personally want the comics to fill in too much. That's been maybe one of the things I've run up against with the comics, especially between Empire and Jedi, which is a shorter amount of time. And you're just kind of like, wow, there's a lot going on. But hey, the week is long and we get a lot of things done in the week. So I guess you have a lot of stories here and there. So again, that's kind of just personal, but I'm very happy to hear that Simon, who does a great job keeping track of our ForceCenter episodes in a Google sheet that he will occasionally share with me. Simon is the soul that makes that happen there. I'm glad to hear people enjoying it. So because of There's Some Joy, I wouldn't mind seeing it. I think there's that 5-year period has some room. I would start big. You actually could see Leia and Mothma trying to get this all right, because we don't necessarily have to be worried about who's cast in Leia's role. You could definitely have Genevieve O'Reilly, of course, if you do this live action. So there's that. So you could see that. You and I have talked for years, since 2015. You and I have said the words Luke Skywalker and Lor San Tekka on adventures. We know that kind of happens. Luke's got a lot of things to do between Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian, right? So that could be fun to explore in comics. But even that was kind of my answer coming in. But to read Simon's answer here on the show, as he went through it, the Aftermath, Alphabet Squadron, Battlefront 2, there's so many wonderful characters there and so many corners around their own stories that you could tie them in more directly. Imagine more time with Iden Versio. That story, the Battlefront 2 story mode is quick. Unfortunately, the writers had said more stuff was there, but that wasn't the purpose of the game. So we had to kind of, it was pared down a bit. So there's stuff on the table. There's just, Del Meeko, Zay, their daughter, being born. There's so many things you can get to. Shriv, of course, just take an entire Shriv arc. So that's kind of exciting. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. So Simon, your love for the comics now combined with your question has got me thinking about things I hadn't thought about even coming into the show today. You could explore it. And I don't need to get all the answers. And I think that's sometimes where I get a little, there's just a lot going on in the comics and I don't know if I need it all answered. That's a personal thing, but you don't need to get all of the space covered leading into Mando, just these big key moments or, Iden off doing something. There's some stuff there to tell.
Yeah, no, there definitely is some room. There's, so much great stuff. Simon listed, 3 great ones: Aftermath, Alphabet Squadron, Battlefront 2. Princess and the Scoundrel is just days after, but it does kind of deal with some of the great Aftermath stuff that would be big moments. Not literally the book Aftermath, but the immediate aftermath of Return of the Jedi. Shattered Empire does the same thing. So there's definitely some stuff in here that I would be intrigued by. But I also just like leaving a little bit of elbow room on the big 3. I would say big 4, 5, 6, 7 by the time you start putting in Lando and Chewie and 3PO and R2. I think there's something about it where just like I don't want any time period so completely filled in that there isn't room to tell another story. I kind of like the idea that 20 years from now you could still have one other story about what Luke and Leia were doing between Empire and Jedi, and I think that's been a little bit of my resistance to the comics of like, don't entirely fill in the map of these main characters.
I do agree with that in a big way.
And it's not like it's sacred, don't touch it. It's more about that of like the Clone Wars has been really well constructed to be like, we've got a lot of major moments. There's still some major moments we haven't got, right? Hey, Anakin building the Skywalker blade, but it was still constructed in a way like you could still right now just go like, here's a story of something that Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka did in the Clone Wars that you've never heard about,
Yes.
Ahsoka could have a formative adventure that she's recalling in her live action show that we've never heard about. There's still that elbow room. So I just want that for the main original trilogy characters.
Agree with that.
I think there's also something about the fact that a lot of the storytelling around there has been crafted with elbow room. Like kind of, there are different reports about whether or not Luke was there when Ben Solo was born, right? The different stories about exactly when Luke did what. So if they were going to move forward, I think I would be interested in early Luke and Lor San Tekka adventures. That I'd be totally on board with. I wouldn't mind in the comics having Luke and Leia's training. I think what gets started in Princess and the Scoundrel book of Leia being like, I'm now holding on to all these destinies of who I could be. and I'm trying to manage them all and decide who do I need and want to be. So having breathing room to tell a longer adventure of her being like, this is so hard for me to step away from everything, but I gotta see what this legacy is about, and walking away from it. And that would be really interesting. I'd love that story sometime. It might be good for comics.
Yeah.
I could also see something where Luke kind of fades in the background. Save him from an animated series. Because I really, really want young Luke and Ben. That's not this exact time period, but moving forward, because I know he hasn't even started his school here. But I could really see the main Star Wars comic shifting into a sort of the building of the New Republic, and Leia is a main figure. Han is kind of in and out as he shifts away from being, a freedom fighter to what's next for me.
Grows his beard. Yeah.
Grows his beard. Yep. And then you have supporting characters that are built up from other things like Shriv and Iden, and Mothma could be a real main character, right? I think that could be really interesting for the comics.
Yeah, the New Republic era. Yeah, and I'm with you too. I want to be careful how I say it. Is that I'm not like saying, it's all sacred. I don't want to hear these stories. I actually do want to hear these stories. It's just I want to leave room for projects that we might not even dream of now. And even with like the potential of Kira, I've loved that the character is back and she's in good hands in terms of the comic writers. But there's so much stuff there where I'm like, well, if you were to get $1 million now for a series, now there's a lot of things we have to make sure are there. And I don't know if I want a creator contained by that. That's just, again, a personal take. But I love what you're pitching, that kind of New Republic era.
Yeah. And I think for Luke, that in some ways, that's what I'm most excited about, is everything in his Jedi adventures, right? In particular, I still just really want someday Luke with a functioning Jedi Order, and Ben is one of the students. It could be a Clone Wars like revelatory animated series. I love that. We talked a little bit about Simon's question from the perspective of, what if they do continue and what would we like to see? But now let's talk about the what if they don't continue with the main original trilogy characters. I do think that Favreau and Filoni are really requesting to not be boxed in too much.
Yes.
But does that extend from Mando to the entire time period? I don't know. What do you think about that? Number one, I think they are absolutely, this is not some fact I've heard at a party or anything. I just absolutely think Dave and John are like, no, give us the road. Give us the room, please. Yeah. We might have a revelation about Din's background. We know the big beats, but we might have a revelation, and we don't want to be in the business of contradicting a book. We, don't. I mean, that Mandalorian book was announced, I think, written, and it didn't happen for a reason. And I'm really the visual dictionary didn't happen, right?
Yeah, it didn't happen. Yeah,
and I think that's all very Mando direct. And to me, that question is, if Filoni's like, yeah, we're pushing towards what's going on with the New Republic, and we don't want to be locked in by, but on this date, Mon Mothma declared X,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, I think there's some room in that era. I'm interested in some other eras in the comic lines, that they haven't pushed towards yet. It's just obviously, Simon's question is they keep going forward as from the moments of New Hope after it makes sense to see them go forward.
Mm-hmm. So if they didn't go forward for whatever reason, either it's just give the original trilogy heroes a little bit of breathing room, don't crowd the Mandoverse, where would you want a Star Wars mainline comic book, the Star Wars series, to go?
I really am intrigued, and we have things that have gotten into this. I think, the young Obi-Wan and Anakin series that came out years ago. But that 10 years between episode 1 and 2, there's some stuff you and I are just talking about, just wondering if Qui-Gon had survived, but he didn't. And so there's still questions to answer. There's still a lot going on. We've had, EK with the Padme books has gone into it a little bit there. But I know there's not a lot of tension, and Palpatine's not out and about in the galaxy in black robes, swinging a sword the way he does later on. But there's just something. There's a lot of how do we get? I understand point A. How do we get to point B in episode 2? That I would like to be explored. And because they have done such a good job of creating new characters and new, Afra goes on her wonderful adventures and everything. You could do that in this time period. Basically what I'm saying is I want the Dexter one-shot issue.
No, I really wouldn't mind if it was the Star Wars main line that lands between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, because there is some really rich stuff there. There is some, parts of Anakin's youth. I get that if you start too soon after the Phantom Menace, then, it's not like he's, running out swinging the lightsaber immediately. But you have all these Jedi to play with and expand. I think one of the really great things we were talking about earlier, is we know from the crawl of Attack of the Clones that there was violence. It was stressing the Jedi to the breaking point. So what is that? There's so much room to create new characters in new worlds and new conflicts that, are a couple of Jedi, absolutely bogged down in a little, planetary civil war that's, quote unquote, little from a galactic perspective, but huge if you know the characters and care about them. And poor Kit Fisto's stuck in the middle of it. Right.
Poor Kit, just smiling away. There's political intrigue and political thrills as Palpatine takes office, right? You get to focus on that and are exactly what we were talking about earlier. So, it's dawn on the next day and everyone's flying back to Coruscant and like, all right, okay, but really, was that a Sith Lord? We know, what are we doing with that? And how Palpatine is either aware of that or trying to evade that or trying to control. There's a lot of the thriller aspects I think you could explore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just you could even dive deeper into some of the Jedi we know and their personality and their conflicts, which they've done really well. We both really like the Mace Windu 5-shot, I think Palpatine is already, gearing up to have the crime accelerate in the galaxy, because crime and he wants crime and greed. He's doing everything he can to turn up the dial on those. So you've got some interesting things with, the Hutt Council, gaining more power, Black Sun. You got a lot of baddies to play with in that era.
Yeah. No, you're getting me excited for something that might not happen at full back. And again, it's a long stretch of time, a decade or so, right? So give or take a year here or there. You'd have a lot of room to really get to it. And again, I sound like a broken record, but I just sometimes worry of just like, man, there's a lot between Empire and Jedi, and every second of the day seems full. And that's not even true, but just comes across that to me. And that's been one of my big issues. But again, glad folks like Simon are enjoying those comics.
Me too. And I have enjoyed everyone I've read, and I look forward to reading more. But now I'm getting excited. Like, it's the Star Wars mainline, and your main characters are Obi-Wan, Yoda, Padme, and Mace Windu. You know what? Ayla Secura, she's a main character too. And I know there were hundreds of Legends comics playing in these areas. So maybe some people are like, yes, here, go read this. But I also like reading a new canon stuff, even if it's similar to what has come before.
Yeah. And I want one final thing to say, in talking about the comics, you just said it there. If like you've enjoyed everyone you've read, I've never closed an issue of a comic, been like, what a waste of my time. I don't like this. Even I struggle with the Bounty Hunter series more than any of them, but I still read them and I go, yeah, it's good. It's just, there's so much going on, but I do enjoy them on an individual basis. Like I always say, I enjoy that they're in my stack.
Yeah, me too. And I just wish I had even more time and focus for them, because when I read them and get into them, I really enjoy them. So I'm looking forward to reading more. And with that, we're going to move to our final question from Jonathan Curti. Jonathan says, hello, ForceCenter friends. I had a good time recently thinking about all the mysteries of Palpatine's origins. Like, how wasn't he found by the Jedi as a child? Given his family's power and status on a planet like Naboo, did they deliberately hide his Force sensitivity so he was not discovered by the Jedi? I don't actually know if there are canon answers to this or not, but it is fun to explore. But it also got me thinking, what if Palpatine had been discovered by the Jedi and brought to the temple to be trained? What kind of Jedi could he have been? Would he have found his way to the dark arts and taken down the temple from the inside? Or could he have become one of the Order's most zealous supporters? What do you think? Clearly, this is completely what-if territory. So anything goes. Love the show, and thanks for all you do. I love this question, and I love imagining Palpatine singing the Cole Porter song, Anything Goes. That would be fascinating all by itself. This is great. I did refresh myself a little bit, Ken, on what answers we have from Legends.
Okay.
Because I remembered some stuff from the Darth Plagueis novel.
Mm-hmm.
And a quick refresher on Legends Wikipedia. Generally, I didn't track down every source of where the story is told. A lot of it's in the Darth Plagueis novel. But throughout Legends, there's a general picture that Palpatine was just born and that boy wasn't right kind of vibe in Legends, that he was, that he had a really contentious relationship with his father because his father could tell he's different. That boy's not right. In the Darth Plagueis novel, he eventually makes contact. And that in the scene I remembered was he was already kind of aware that he was being courted, I believe, or maybe had already fully signed up to be an apprentice, but was trying to make the most of his Naboo power and connections. But there's a scene where Palpatine just rages out and slaughters his entire family. And then that has to be covered up, right?
Right.
So in general, the Legends story of Palpatine, and again, not a super Legends expert, I'm sharing with you what I researched and what I remembered. But it seems to be a general. He was always not right. He was, of course, found by the Sith, lashed out, murdered his family, had to cover it up. So that's Legends. Now we're having fun of like, okay, that's wonderful. That's Legends. But what if in canon? So, Ken, where do you go with this?
That's a big one, man. That's a big pitch over. Where do we go? I totally forgot about that detail in the Plagueis novel. I envision young Palpy, young Sheevy, as always having he's a manipulator. He is trying to get the better deal of a friendship on the playground. He is very smart. So he's studied. He's not buying any answers from anyone, but he might be selling his to others in exchange for now you owe me. I think he's that. And so I think there's still room to have a big traumatic incident, to have a big why. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm not just saying he was born this way, but I do like the that boy ain't right type of The point is, even if he's discovered, I wondered, this is a what if to a what if, that, all right, he's learning, he's doing good, he's excelling. But he sees, is it just in his nature? Is it just in his DNA and his hardwiring of, I got to get to the top. How do I get to that tower? How do I get to that high council? How quick can I become a master? How quick can I get someone? And if it just still corrupts him to the point of he hits a wall, he hits a ceiling, and then along comes some character in a shadow in a dark robe that is like, I got away. I still think it almost ends up in the same spot.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's so fascinating and so powerful about it is it just kind of goes to stories of and real world discussions and real world science of, what people used to describe as nature versus nurture. Right. My own non-scientific opinion is like, yeah, I think some of us have general aptitudes, like we're a little bit more skilled at X, Y, or Z. And if it is, if those abilities are noticed, nurtured, if we like them, we become even better at them. I think there's some things like, oh, well, I could get good at a certain thing, but I would have to work a little harder at it than one thing or the other. I think that's what makes this interesting, because I think we all have gifts and abilities and they're a little different. And sometimes that comes from, hey, maybe just being really kind is baked into our bones. Maybe being a little aggressive and assertive is baked into our bones. I don't know. Maybe, yeah. But my big opinion about this and about Star Wars in particular, I think the story of Star Wars is there's no that boy is born not right. I don't think characters are born evil or good in Star Wars. I think that's what's so important about the story is it's about choices. And the characters who say this was always your destiny, you're going to do this, are almost always the bad guys. Yeah. When the good guys say this is your destiny, it means you have an unfortunate problem and you're not going to be able to ignore the problem. You have to face it one way or another. But that's about choice. But here, Darth Vader or Palpatine talk about destiny. It's not about you making a choice. It's just the way it is.
You're stuck.
Yeah. And I think, going back to George Lucas making this for 12-year-olds, making this for people who are on the cusp of making those decisions, the decisions who are going to make you the person you are, the decisions that are going to affect the people around you. I think that discussion has always been, you always have a choice. Han Solo had a choice to turn around. Even Vader, after all the horror he committed, had a choice to make a better decision with Luke than he did listening to any of the other people who loved him. He made bad choices. He didn't listen to Padme. He didn't listen to Obi-Wan. He didn't even really listen to the memory of his mother. He finally listened and made a better choice. In all of Rise of Skywalker being the villains telling Rey, you're doomed because of your bloodline, right?
Yeah. You are, yeah.
To me, that lesson is so important in Star Wars that I don't know if I ever need to hear the story of Palpatine. I don't know if I need to have empathy for him because he is, such a great villain, right? He's such a great, who knows how he ended up here, but he is the epitome of bad choices that humans make, cruel choices, from the political to the evil cackling space wizard with danger fingers and lightning hands. He is this picture of everything that could be evil. But in my heart of hearts, I think he just had a bad childhood, right? I think this is my total what if headcanon. I'm not basing this on anything. Total what if headcanon. I think he's born to horrible parents. I think his parents are rich on Naboo and bitter in their own souls, and they're out of step with Naboo culture because Naboo certainly does elevate some people who are rich and powerful, and you're in an important family. But Naboo also really balances that out by honor, respect, community. How can we avoid the mistakes of the past? Tons of great stuff in the E.K. Johnston books about that, right?
Yeah.
Imagine his parents are really rich, and they go to, and in their heart of hearts, they're like, we want more power, and we don't agree with all this reaching out to other people that Naboo do. Those Gungans should stay in the swamp.
Yeah, those Gungans are going to take our jobs. Yeah.
Those Gungans are going to take their jobs, but they have to nod and be friendly at parties and pretend they don't believe what they really believe in order to keep their power, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they discover early on that their kid is doing the weird Jedi crap and got, he saw something shiny and he lifted a little space marble in the air and they're like, no. Maybe they turned a Jedi away at the door, but I imagine him having the kind of parents who said, you are an extension of us. You're not your own being. You are our pawn to get what we want. We're going to raise you to have political power. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to put a smiley, happy face out into the world. And just like a parent who wants to be famous doesn't work, and they put it all on their kid to do what they didn't do, they're going to make Palpatine be who they want to be. Yeah. And, and I think that snaps at some point. That's my headcanon.
No, that actually makes, I really like that a lot of especially, the restrictive nature of these parents push them down a path. I love the turning away a Jedi at the door. not our kid. That would really work for me. But I'm with you too. And we had this question about is there irredeemable evil in Star Wars, and talked about the Palpatine of it all there. I think for Star Wars, just him showing up packaged as is good enough for me. But it's fun what ifs. There's a lot of that. And I do, and again, the Plagueis novel is one of my favorites of the EU Legend stuff. Is one of the last ones I read before the big switchover, and Lucina's great, and it's solid. And that was one of the first things that made me really reevaluate what I thought I knew about Phantom Menace. So exploring that kind of thing would still kind of work for me.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I read it that 2015, so getting on quite a ways back, but I really enjoyed it when I read it. And I'm not entirely against seeing some young Palpatine, but I think that Palpatine is valuable because he can be a funny, cool, hilarious, terrifying mirror. Right. That's part of what I love about him is he is both so over the top and both also so reflective of real life horrible choices. I think that there's such truth in what he is saying to Anakin from his point of view in the Galaxy's Opera House scene, right? He's manipulating Anakin right and left. But I think the worldview he expresses is his true worldview, which is that the truth is everyone is inherently selfish and only wants power for themselves. Anybody who claims they don't operate that way is weak to not be playing the game, and a liar that they're not secretly playing the game. So in Palpatine's mind, he isn't playing a different game than anyone else. He's just honest about the game, and he's better at it than everyone.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in like analyzing how does he get that mindset, and why is there no one in his life that can maybe crack that worldview and maybe say, is that true? Have you experienced anything yourself, Palpatine, to make you feel that isn't true? Because that's what happens to Vader. That's what happens to Ben. They get reminded that that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I always go, and I think you're kind of talking about the same thing, but I do, the young Sheev, it's college Sheev for me. It's college Sheev that I'm intrigued by a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
to see
play. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cause like, I mean, I think, I love the glimpses we get of him once he is kind of fully formed and aware that I'm wearing this politician's mask, and I get some joy out of it, but really it's a mask I have to wear until I can put all these fools under my boot, Yeah. But a little bit earlier in life would be really interesting.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to analyze there, and him playing. They're all bad. They all want the same thing, and just that lie. Not trailing, going out to the end game of the Jedi, what they really do want. Yeah, it's easy to sell that lie. So how and why?
Yeah, I mean it's why he thinks he can break Luke and Rey, because he just thinks that their viewpoint is flawed, and no one is going to come to save them. Right. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Your buddies will save you. Sure. Whatever. So I guess for me to fully then answer the rest of the question is, to me, it depends on if he was found by the Jedi and brought into the Jedi Order, even if he was born assertive, aggressive, kind of wrestling with things, I still think if that philosophy had not become absolutely essential to his being, that there's no waking moment where he doesn't believe life is a game, everybody's playing, and if you claim you're not playing, you're a liar. If he could have been freed from that mentality, maybe Jedi life would have been a little rocky for him. If he was just a natural hothead. But I think he would have had some hopes, or he would have been expelled from the Order. But I don't think he would have succeeded in destroying it from the inside. I don't think he could have been inside the Jedi Order and hid who he was.
Nope. Would have been a food fight in the cafeteria would have come out. The evil would have come out.
Yeah. And it would have been like Sheev, let's talk. Let's talk, Sheev.
Are those danger fingers, young Sheev?
Are you danger? Is it just Sheev? Are you that mad about your name? Is that the wound that your parents gave you that you cannot escape?
Yeah, could be it.
That's the jokey headcanon. He was named Sheev, and his fate was sealed.
Sealed with a Sheev. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, great stuff. I love this question, Jonathan. Palpatine's fascinating. We love him and hate him. Love to hate him for a reason.
Yep, I am endlessly fascinated by him and love him to death. Can't wait to see what witty bon mots Ian McDiarmid drops in his appearances at Star Wars Celebration. All right, those are our questions. We do usually have a Power of the Light Side segment if you're a newer listener or a newer patron. We ask patrons for submissions about something joyful about Star Wars. It can be a favorite character, a favorite moment, a life lesson, anything you want, a toy. It doesn't matter. Just something that has brought you joy in Star Wars. We do have a post. If you go to the post section, scroll down just a little bit, you'll find a picture of Obi-Wan smiling as he's looking at Luke and Leia in A New Hope, and that is the call for submissions. If we don't have many more submissions roll in, I'll do a fresh post so it's closer to the top, but I know we got a lot of new patrons, so if you're listening, if you're a patron, and if you want to submit, that is where to find it. Ken, where can people find us?
You can find us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod, One Hive Social if you're over there, Instagram and YouTube as well. Subscribe over there, hit the notification bell and button and all those things so you don't miss anything we put out. Shorts, essays, and otherwise. Figure Fights episodes there too. Podcast available on Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. Just search or find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. I saw someone this week got themselves a ForceCenter Speculate Responsibly t-shirt you're going to be able to wear at Star Wars Celebration Europe. Patreon.com/ForceCenter is where you can find us and support us directly there if you so choose. Find me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com, to find out information on other things to do like Pop Rocket Radio, The Blathering, Casterly Talk, and more. Joseph, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media as at Joseph Scrimshaw. I'm promoting my Instagram feed a little bit more, so come find me there. I'm also on Twitter and Mastodon, and if you want to check out some of my comedy bits and short films, please visit me on YouTube. Just search for Joseph Scrimshaw. But for now, for myself, for poor old Sheev, whatever happened to him, this has been Cues of the Force.
ForceCenter.